All right, number 9. So at a certain point in the war, we see that the machine has taken over warfare. No longer is it about the men on the ground. And in fact, the men on the ground often felt that they had more in common with the person pointing the gun at them on the other side than their political leaders back home. So I chose to represent that by two soldiers facing opposite directions crossing their arms. There were actually accounts of Germans and French and British getting up and basically giving speeches to one another, and no one shooting at each other. They're giving speeches about how bad the war is, and even though the language barrier is there, they're all cheering because they all know what it's about. But the mechanical side of the war has just taken over. Men lose control of the war here. Winston Churchill will say that, and I happen to agree with him. The machine can kill so much more efficiently than a person, and we've chosen to turn the power of science, the power of math, the power of technology. We've chosen to turn that into killing machines rather than using it to do anything. So artillery plays a major role here, and I wanted to show just how abstract this almost becomes, except for the men on the ground. They're the ones dealing with the consequences of this, but there are all sorts of projectiles being fired at one another. So I used different heads of detachable screwdrivers. I wanted to show like the tool-like nature of this, the mechanical side of this, where really like there's people seeing artillery as tools, and the purpose of these tools is to decimate the other side. People by 1916 have lost control of the war, and it's taking over. More and more and more of the civilization must be sacrificed to be thrown into the killing fields. You see in German towns, you see them melting down old church bells that are centuries old in order to make bullets and bombs. There were actually funerals held for some of these church bells. It's a famous thing. You can go look it up. But what's fascinating to me about this is that these are all human inventions, and yet the regret that people will have at making them and at using them in this way after the war is just it's such a paradox, and it's such a weird occurrence, and it's the unrepentant nature of many of the leaders is striking. All of the men on the ground can see that nothing is changing, and yet the solution from their commanders is fire more bullets. Photography was very useful in portraying this, because photography itself is a mechanical concept. It's a mechanical process. However, it is operated by a human. Humans make choices about when to click shutter buttons. Humans make choices about how to develop images. And so I almost wanted to take out some of that mechanical element and yet portray it in an organic way, because remember, these are just sheets of photo paper with objects laid over them by me and then exposed to light. So I have that human creative aspect involved, and I've hoped I've found a way to show the mechanical nature, but coming from a more human side.